Yo, what's up guys? Welcome back to another video in the Python series. In this video, I'll be showing you how to work with strings and the different things you can do with them. Alright guys, so I've made a new Python file called strings.py. This is where we're going to have the code for this episode. So string is another one of the data types that we're going to learn. So last episode we learned about integers and floats. Those are two of the number data types that we can use to represent data in Python and store data using those types. So with strings, a string is another data type for holding characters. So let's say that, so actually we've been using strings so far many times. So every time we print something and it's like this, like a sentence, I like corn, that's a string. The quotes here and the thing in between the quotes makes up a string. So again, a string is a sequence of characters, and that can be letters, it can be numbers, it can be symbols, it can be whatever you need. So we can say, I like corn 100 times more than your mama does. And then I can even have symbols. So like any of the symbols on my keyboard, even like symbols that you see on the internet, you could copy and paste those onto this because those count as characters too. But yeah, these are the common ones: letters, numbers, even spaces, which we're going to learn about in a little bit. That's called whitespace. So spaces, tabs, etc. But yeah, that's a string. And again, just to reiterate, a string can be it can be represented with single quotes or double quotes. So name Cody, or name is equal to single quotes Cody. It doesn't actually matter. But you may decide to use one type of quotes over another when you find yourself having to use quotes within the string itself. So let's say that I have something called quotes. So we'll have a new variable that holds a string, and inside that string we'll say Abraham Lincoln once said, and then we can say let there be light. So already you can see that it kind of messes up. Like essentially, IntelliJ is already warning you what the problem is, but really the problem is that Python does not know what you're trying to do. So when you add another quote within the already double quotes, the ending and closing double quotes, it doesn't know whether that's representing a closing string, an opening string, or what you're trying to do. So one way you can get around this is actually just use single quotes. So now it won't really conflict. So you got to retype it just because IntelliJ is a little confused. So we could just say Abraham Lincoln once said, let there be light. So there we go. Now we can use quotes within our string, except that because we're using single quotes in this case, it's not conflicting with the string itself because the string itself is declared with an opening and closing double quotes. So since we're using a different type of quotes within that string, it doesn't conflict at all. And you could do the opposite if you wanted to. The opening and closing double quotes that you have representing the string could actually just be single quotes, and then the quote within the string that Abraham Lincoln is reciting could be surrounded by double quotes. And there it would not conflict either, okay? And there we go. So it says Abraham Lincoln once said, let there be light. Awesome. And it has the quotes right there. So if you decide that for some reason you want to use double quotes only, you could say Abraham Lincoln once said, and then you could put a backslash and then a quote, let there be light. And then backslash and a quote, backslash and a quote. There we go. So this is doing the same thing. So basically what this is called an escape sequence. Anytime you have a backslash followed by some kind of character, that's usually an escape sequence that represents some sort of special character. So essentially what it does in this case is it lets you put a quote into your string that you have here without conflicting with the opening and closing double quotes of the string itself. So that's one way. So that's a second way you can do this without having the conflicting issue. So if we were to rerun this program, it would print out Abraham Lincoln once said, let there be light. So this time we're using both double quotes, but it's not conflicting because technically you're not directly putting a double quotes within the string itself. You're escaping it using an escape sequence. So this is very common to modern programming languages, major programming languages like Java, I believe C++, Python, probably even JavaScript. This is how you can avoid that issue. Same thing for single quotes. You should be able to escape it, I believe. Let's find out. I like potatoes. And it works, good. So now you can use single quotes on both if you wanted to, and it does not conflict. So it says, I like potatoes, very cool. And just one more example, just so that I can hammer this into your brain so you remember it. Another example is especially when you're using contractions within strings. So I don't really understand how people don't like tacos. So in this case, as you can see, we are using single quotes for the contraction here. So instead of putting do not, we're putting don't. So it's one word, but we're able to use a single quote here because the outside quotes are not single quotes, they're just double quotes, so it does not conflict. So that's another example of where you probably want to use a double quotes instead of a single quotes, even though you can use a single quotes, just because it's easier in that case, okay? Okie dokie, so next thing I want to show you some different functions or methods that you can use upon strings to transform them into different things. So let's have my name again. So name is equal to Billy Bob. Billy Bob. So essentially what this is, we have a variable here, and the variable happens to be storing a string because we know it's a string because it's surrounded by quotes, all right? Anyway, so if we want to transform the string, we can. So we can reassign the variable. So name is equal to name dot, and we can do all these different things here after the dot. And these are called methods or functions. So methods are a type of function technically. It's just terminology, but you can just basically call them functions if you want to. The function we've been working with so far is the print function. That's a function. Like I said before, terminology may not stick just as you're a beginner, but as you use it more and more, and as you become more familiar with these terms and how to use them, the terminology will stick. But this is called a method, and a method is in a way a function. Same thing at the end of the day, but a little different. And you can use these things to essentially transform your data in this case. So you can run some of these methods upon your strings, and it gives you a new string that has been modified. So an example of this would be the upper method. So you can do name.upper, and it's already given you autocomplete suggestions, which is really cool on the part of PyCharm here. And then put parentheses after it. So upper, parentheses, and then new line. And if we wanted to print out a name now to see what it changed into, we can do that. So now it says Billy Bob is screaming it at you, Billy Bob! So we originally assigned it as just regular Billy Bob, but since we called the upper method, or the upper function, it's transforming this string here into all uppercase letters. So essentially it's like this magical piece of code that runs when you call the upper function that takes the string and transforms it and gives you back a new string, okay? And if we want to verify that this is actually happening, we can print it out before the method is called. So run this again. It says Billy Bob, and then it says Billy Bob! So again, what's happening here is you're assigning a variable, the value of Billy Bob, when Billy Bob's a string, then you're printing it out. And then on this line, you're taking the value of the name variable, calling the upper function or the upper method to transform it into all uppercase letters, and then setting that new value that this gives you into the name variable. And then you're printing out the new reassigned and updated name variable, okay? Now, if you wanted to, you don't have to reassign, the name variable. You can just leave it how it was originally, just by taking this, cutting it with Control X, or just deleting it, and then just have this inside of the print function. So in this case, it's doing the exact same thing, except that it's not reassigning the name variable. So the name variable still has the original value of Billy Bob in the regular character case, okay? So if we print this out, we'll get the same result. So Billy Bob and then Billy Bob! And so the reason this still works is because this function here, this method, I'm going to just call it function from now on until we formally learn about methods. Essentially, when you call this, like I said, it's going to transform your current string value or the current variable value, which is a string, into a new string with all uppercase, and it's going to return it or give it back to you. So this basically, think of it as a math expression. When we do 1 + 1, Python is smart enough to evaluate this arithmetic and give you back the value of 2 into the print function. In this case, it's very similar. Python is able to come here and say, oh, we need to evaluate this upper function, and then the upper function is going to give the value back, and then Python is going to pass that value into the print function and then print it out, okay? So let's do some more examples of that, okay? So we can do print name.lower. That's another one we can do. So in this case, this is a function that takes your variable, which is a string, and then converts it to all lowercase. So let's run this again, and now we get Billy Bob, and then Billy Bob, whisper. So there you go. That's another cool little function you can use. It's like a utility that you can use within your programs that you may find useful. And then another one that I want to show you is for title. So name, dot, and then title. And now if you run this, it'll say Billy Bob, regular, Billy Bob, and then Billy Bob, and then Billy Bob, the regular one. So what this does, the title function, it takes a string and then makes every first letter of each word uppercase. So it's like proper titling. So let me give you another example. Let's just say we have a variable title. We'll call it and we'll call it the Lord of Doo-Doo, or how about Dookietopia? And now you have a variable called title with the value, it's a string called the Lord of Dookietopia. And if you're going to present this to the world, if you're going to output it, it'd be very improper if you just leave it like this, right? In normal everyday English language, you would want to capitalize it so it's more proper looking. So the way you can do that is you can call the title function. So you could just print title dot title. In this case, the function happens to have the same name as the variable, but these are of course two different things. This is a variable here, and this is a function or a method that you're calling. And you know it's a function or a method just because it's followed by a parentheses. Every time you call a function or a method, it has to have the parentheses there. So that's how you know for sure that it's not a variable, it's something different, okay? So let's go ahead and run this, and now we should get the Lord of Dookietopia. Now it looks very, very proper. Of course, realistically, I believe you wouldn't, capitalize the O when you're doing a title in real life. But either way, it looks pretty good, okay? You get the point. So again, it's just a special piece of code that takes something, in this case a string, and then does some magic on it, some behind the scenes code, and then gives you back a new value in this case. In this case, it just looks more proper. And let's just give you another example because I like to practice. Make sure you guys, get lots of practice so that it'll stay in your brain. So let's just have another one. So current name will print out to the console. We'll say current name, print name. Oh yeah, we no longer have the current name, do we? So or the name variable, excuse me. So let's make a new name variable. Call it Dewey because that's my cat's name. Let's do it all lowercase. How about that? So name is equal to Dewey, and then we'll print out current name. This happens to be a string, but it's not in a variable. It's just a string on its own. And then we're going to print out our variable, which happens to hold a string of the value Dewey as a string. And then let's run this to see what it has so far. There you go. So we get current name Dewey. Now let's go ahead and reassign name to make it look better. So name is equal to name dot title. You're calling the title function. And by the way, you can press tab for the autocomplete to complete. So anytime you have autocomplete that pops up, you can navigate it by doing the up and down arrows, which is really cool. And then if you choose one that you like, go ahead and select it. So let's navigate to, for example, upper, and press tab on your keyboard, and it'll autocomplete it for you. So that's a cool trick you can do. It'll be very helpful when you have to do lots of coding so you can get by quicker, okay? But in this case, we want to do title, okay? And then let's print out modified name, and then print out name again. And then go ahead and try and guess what the result is going to be if we run this program, okay? All right, so let's run it, and we get current name Dewey, and then modified name Dewey, but it looks more proper. And we can change this as we want to, so upper. Now it's going to scream it, Dewey! Ah! My cat's like, what the fuck is going on? Oh, you can't see my cat. I don't have my camera on this episode, but he's looking at me right now. All right, so in this case, we assign a variable to the string value of Dewey, print out current name, print out the value of the variable into the console, or to the output, whatever you want to call it. Then we're reassigning our variable to name.upper. So the value of name.upper is going to be essentially Dewey in all caps. So we're printing that out after we print out modified name. And this is the result down here, okay? Pretty simple stuff. Let's move on. So now that we learned some basic functions that we can call upon our strings to make them do cool things, let me teach you about something called string formatting. So string formatting, also known as f-strings, so formatted strings. So string formatting is essentially the practice of when you have a string, you can format it to pass in variables or pass in values into the string automatically using Python. So let me give you an example. Let's say that we want to print out an introduction. We want to say, hello, my name is Cody, and I am 20 years old. Let's say we want to do that. So let's have the introduction here. So introduction is equal to, hello, my name is Cody, and I am 20 years old. And then print this out, introduction, there we go. And I'm auto-completing by pressing tab, of course. Okay, so run that, and now it says, hello, my name is Cody, and I am 20 years old. So that's all fine and dandy, but let's say that we want to make this more dynamic. Let's say that we want to, have Cody stored in a variable called name, and we want to have 20 stored in a variable called age. The reason you may want to do that is like the example I gave you before, where if you have something stored in a variable, you only have to change it in one place where you assign that variable. You don't have to go everywhere you're using it. So yeah, so in this case, let's just do it. So I have name is equal to Cody, and then age is equal to 20. So now how can we take the values of these two variables here and put them into our string automatically? We can do that using an f string. So to format a string, you just put an f before the opening quote, and now you're telling Python that you want to do string formatting on it. And now anywhere that you want to automatically fill in a variable value or any value, you just put an opening and closing curly brackets. So boom, and then PyCharm automatically puts the closing one for me because it's smart enough to know what I'm trying to do. And then inside of this thing here, in between these two opening and closing curly brackets, I put the value or the variable that I want to be formatted into the string. In this case, it's name. There we go. And now no red shows up, so we know we did something correct. So let's go and run this program, and we should get, hello, my name is Cody, and I'm 20 years old. Really cool. And if we change this, we can say Cody Simpson to be more accurate. Run this again, and now it automatically says, hello, my name is Cody Simpson, and I'm 20 years old. Pretty cool stuff, right? Let's go ahead and do this one now. So delete this, replace it with curly bracket, and we can put age. And now it'll say the same thing. But this time Python is automatically looking at this string here saying, I need to format this. So it's going to take the values that it needs to put in there, and it puts it in there, and then sets the value of introduction to that. And then we're printing out introduction. And if you wanted to, of course, print function accepts any string. It doesn't have to be a variable exactly. So you could just, cut this and put it in there like that. And that would work the exact same way. There you go. And another thing you can do is if you don't want to use variables, you don't have to. It just has to be a value in general. So let's make a new formatted string or f string. So f and then opening and closing quotes. And now we'll say 1 plus 1 is equal to, and let's just have it so it says the value 2. So let's print this out. And now we get 1 plus 1 is equal to 2. But let's say that we want to actually calculate the arithmetic for that and then put it in there automatically. So let's put an opening, closing quotes, boom. And now we can just put 1 plus 1, and Python should be smart enough to evaluate this. So 1 plus 1 is 2, take the value of 2, format it into the f string, and then print out the f string. So let's run this, and now we get 1 plus 1 is equal to 2. Pretty cool stuff, right? Change this to 10 if we wanted to, 10 plus 10. So now we get 1 plus 1 is equal to 20. Perfect. Okie dokie, let's move on to the next thing. This is called, this is kind of what I mentioned earlier. It's about whitespace. So whitespace is essentially any spacing or non-visual character in a string. And these usually include spaces, tabs, and etc. I mean, really just spaces and tabs for the most part. There are other ones, but those are the most common ones that I've seen. So let me give you an example of that. So print, let's just declare a new string within this print function that we want to print out. So we'll say here is a tab. And then if we want to put a tab, we can just press the tab key. And now you have a couple of spaces, I think 4 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 4 spaces it looks like for the tab when you press the tab key. And we can print this out and we get, here is a tab. Let's put a period after this so we know we can highlight it. There we go. So now we have our spaces here. That's white space because it's just like non-visual space, and you can't really, it's not something you could see, but it's there. Those are characters. Again, spacing is characters. You just can't really see them, okay? But another way you can do it is you can use an escape sequence like we used before. So the first escape sequence that we saw was for doing quotes within strings. You can also use escape sequences for things like tabs, new lines, and let me show you. So here is a tab, but this time instead of actually pressing the tab button, we're going to do backslash and then T, okay, and then period. And now we should get pretty much the exact same thing, except that for some reason, this gives you a different amount of spaces, so it looks smaller, but just know that it puts a tab there for you, okay? So it says, here's a tab, put some space, and then it says, here's a tab again, put some space. So this escape sequence here, this kind of special character, backslash T, is another way of putting a tab if you don't want to, press tab inside of your string manually, okay? More commonly though is, you're not really going to do this that often with tabs, but more commonly is for new lines. So we could say print, and let's have a variable actually, instead of just printing it out right away. Let's have a variable called story, and so story is going to have the value of once upon a time, backslash in, there was a little Daniel \n, and he didn't like tacos \n, and then we'll have /t, the end. Okay, so I know that's a little confusing. I'll explain it. Just give me 1 second. Let's print it out first to see what it looks like. So it's print story, and now we get once upon a time, comma, and then there's a new line. There was a little Daniel, new line, and he didn't like tacos, new line, the end. So in this case, you may have noticed that this \n here, it creates a new line for you, aka it's like as if you're pressing enter. So in this case, this one here was as if you're pressing tab within your string. This one's as if you're pressing the enter key with your inside of your string, okay? So it's basically artificially pressing the enter key for you. And that's called a new line, okay? So let me write this down. So \n is equal to new line. That's how you would refer to that escape sequence, okay? New line. And again, escape sequence is just anything, any kind of like special character. So / and then t \n /quotes. Those are escape sequences, okay? So once upon a time, enter. There was a little Daniel, enter, and he didn't like tacos, enter, and then tab, and then the end. Okay, so that's why I have these two tabs here. I just wanted to create some spacing so it's like in the center, so it looks cooler. But yeah, that's essentially how that works. This is actually really, really common. It's very, very helpful. So just remember that, and you can use it within your strings if you want to. Just know that it exists. All right, cool. So now you know the basics of what whitespace is. It really is just, non-visual characters like spaces, tabs, etc. Now I'm going to show you a few more functions or methods that you can call upon strings to remove whitespace, okay? So there's 3 of them. So let's have a variable called clean me up. And we'll just have like a bunch of space, Roosevelt 2020, and then a bunch of space. And let's print this out to see what it looks like. There we go. Boom, Roosevelt 2020. And as you can see, it has a bunch of space around it, which is very weird. And the reason I did this is because sometimes in programs, you're going to be receiving data, and the data is not always going to look as presentable as you want it to be. Or you may not have it in an optimal format for processing it, okay? So sometimes you have to clean it up. Sometimes you have to change the data, transform it to look better or more presentable, or look in a way that you need for it to be worked with, okay? So there's some certain functions you can do, especially when it comes to whitespace, for doing that. And you can do clean, so we're going to do one of them. So clean me up, and then dot. Dot is again how you can call a function upon a string. And we're going to do strip. So no, this is not going to summon a stripper in your program, but it's going to remove the whitespace from the front and the back of your strings, okay? So make sure you end this with opening and closing parentheses, by the way, or else it's not a function. You're not calling it properly. So let's run this, and now we should get Roosevelt 2020 with the spaces around it. But now in this one, we don't have any spaces around it. You can't even highlight anything because there's nothing there. So that's one way you could clean it up. If for some reason you only want to clean up the front or the back, you can do that. So you can do clean me up dot left stripped, or L strip. So L strip stands for left strip. So now you're stripping the left spacing from your string and print it out. There we go. So now there's still spacing on the back though, but on this one there isn't. But on this one there is, because we only stripped the left, right? So let's do rstrip now. That's another one you can do. Clean me up dot rstrip, and now as you can probably assume, this will clean up only the right side but leave the left side. There we go. So we have the left side spacing still there, the white space, but this one is devoid of spacing on the right side. All right. So strip works essentially on any white space, not just spaces. Spaces are just like a common one I can actually just show you. It's easy to type space on your keyboard. But yeah, it works on pretty much any white space that you would want to remove from your strings, especially sometimes white space is not even visible. It's hard to find it, so you have to do a little bit of processing to find it. But in this case, it's pretty easy to see it. Let me give you an example. So if we press tab a bunch of times, now we'll have a bunch of tabs, and this should do the same thing because tabs is white space like I told you. So now we get Roosevelt 2020, Roosevelt 2020 stripped, Roosevelt 2020 stripped on the left side, and then Roosevelt 2020 non-stripped on the left side but stripped on the right side. So works the same way like I said. Now if you want to challenge yourself, try and basically taking this string that we have here, this variable that holds the string here, and first of all stripping it of all the extra spacing, and then also make it more presentable, print it out in a nice way using the functions I've taught you this episode, okay? So the way you would do that is you can do print clean me up dot strip, and this is going to return or give you back a new value with all the spacing stripped. So you can essentially call another function on top of that called title. And now it should not only strip all the spacing from the string, but also get formatted so it's capitalized, okay? So run this, and there we go. We get Roosevelt 2020. Roosevelt, the R in Roosevelt is now capitalized. If 2020 was a letter, it would capitalize it as well, all right? So yeah, this looks a little weird because we're stacking functions one on another. The reason we can do that is because strip here, like I said, returns or gives you back a new string. So since behind the scenes, this is technically a string itself, you can call another string function on top of it. If for some reason this did not return a new string or give you back a new string, you wouldn't be able to do this, but in this case you can, which is pretty cool. So see if you can come up with any clever combinations of functions upon your strings to make some cool stuff, okay? Anyways, that's pretty much it. Hopefully this episode was not too long. Strings are very, very simple, very, very popular, very, very awesome. Hopefully you now know how to do strings, how to make them look nice, how to format them in different ways, how to remove white space, how to add space if you want to using escape sequences, how to work with quotes in your strings, all that stuff. So hopefully you found it very informative, and stay tuned for our next episode where we're going to learn about, I don't know, we'll see. Alright, so that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. In the description below, I'll leave a link to the code for this episode so you can check it out. You can bookmark it, come back to it later. If you forget any concepts or you just want to review the concepts I taught in this video, I'll mark everything up with comments so you can come back and read the code without having to rewatch the video, although your reviews are greatly appreciated. So yeah, I'll leave a link for that in the description below, so make sure to check it out. And another thing is I'll leave a link to our Discord server. It's a big community for programmers, so you can ask for help on your programming projects if you're stuck on something, or maybe you can get some new friends. If you don't have any friends, there's lots of people here. It's growing really fast. You can find lots of people who are passionate about the same things as you. For example, if you like Minecraft Spigot development, you can find lots of people who like that. If you like C++, if you like Java, if you like web development, it's a really, really big programming community. So feel free to join. There's a link for that in the description below. And the last thing I want to tell you is that if you want to support this channel, you can click the join button below this video, and you can join this channel as a member for as low as 99 cents a month, and you can cancel at any time. You get some cool perks like early access to all of my new videos, a cool rank on my Discord server like you see right here on the side, YouTube members, and also you get to see yourself on the screen like you see right now. So if that sounds cool to you, feel free to join. If you don't want to, that's fine. If you can't, that's okay too. I really just appreciate you watching the video anyway. And thank you. Thanks a lot. And that's it. So if you like this video, leave a like. If you want to see more, subscribe. And peace.